for a 24-inch mark there, and a 24-inch mark, sorry, no, stayed here. Need to start over, I screwed up. Hey guys, so in the garage today trying to finish up this mess. Still got several things to tidy up on the airbag mounts, just some finish welding, but for the most part it's pretty well done. Airbags mount, bump stop. And the next thing, you see I've got one bracket mounted right here, right there. The next thing is we've got 4 links, but we do not have a panhard bar. So let me show you what we have to work with. So I've got a few pieces laid out on the truck here, and I'll show you what I got. I got this with the 4-link kit. I ordered this along with the kit because I knew I would need one, and they have a nice one that comes that you can get with it. It's from Infamous Metals, and they sent me 2 of these brackets that I'm going to mount to the frame, and this is your panhard bar here, and it's got your opening for your bushing, and then the other end of it is just hollow, and they sent it like this because you have to cut it for your own setup. They really can't tell any of that ahead of time, and you really don't know what to measure ahead of time until you start getting your axle underneath it. And here's your bushing, and they send this right here with it, and I'm going to have to cut this for length. Your metal piece that goes in your bushing, your bolt rods in, and so I'm going to have to cut that for length to fit in between my brackets. And then the other end of it, they send this high angle time joint with these nice fittings that go into it that create a certain space, and this makes the bar adjustable right here. And they send you 2 of these, which one of them is already tacked to the axle housing there, just kind of for a moment to give me an idea to measure off of. And then when it's done, your bolt will go through there and have your other piece of metal on this side. And for us, it's going to ride roughly about like that, and I may have to clearance into this bracket a little bit. I shouldn't have much axle movement, so I'll look into that as I get the bracket. We'll test some angles and stuff. But I will show you how I kind of figured my axle shift from side to side over here on some cardboard. I got to be an artistic this morning just to kind of plan it out ahead of time in my head how it's going to work before we actually start cutting and welding. Alright, so what I have here is a white piece of cardboard I had sitting over on the shelf there, and this is the box for my aluminum diff cover for this axle. Actually came in a nice white box, so it makes it easy to draw on. I've already kind of played around some here, so don't pay no attention to this. But I made a mark over here on this end, so right there being the beginning of the tape measure, and I came over about 24 inches because measuring inside the truck frame, my track bar is going to end up being somewhere around 24 to 25 inches. Longer the better, so I went back with the shorter measurement of 24 inches and made me a mark over here, and that's what this kind of cross right there is the center point. And then I rotate from my center point over here to over here and made a 24-inch mark, and then done the same thing this way and made a 24-inch mark. So I know my travel is going to be about 9 inches of travel with the airbags. Full compression 3 inches, full travel 12 inches. So it gives me 9 inches. I go 4.5 inches from this mark to here, and 4.5 inches from this mark to here. And so that gives me this range right here is the full travel of my airbags. Normally, they might stretch a bit under an articulation or something here. They can't really compress much more than this point, but this should be the travel area. So you can laugh at me if you want to on the next part here, but I'm looking around the garage for something to use to lay this out, and I found an old pair of earplugs And so now that I've got my marks, I'm going to take my ink pen. I'm going to make a couple wraps around the base of it here. All right. And I'm going to set it here on my mark here. I'm going to come back over here on this other side. I'm going to use my fingernail to kind of hold it right where that X meets. I'm going to make sure my pen's straight up and down. And I'm going to do this to simulate the panhard bar over the length of travel and make sure it lines up where my marks are. And so the next portion of that is over here is you go from, made a straight line off of my measurement off this end, and it looks like I'm going to have about a 1/2 inch of full travel one way or the other on this axle. So when the axle is underneath the frame, it is going to shift as it goes full compression, shift 3/8 to this side, come back to center when the bar is level, and then as the bar goes down, it will shift back 3/8 to this side, or 1/2 inch to this side again, 3/8 to 1/2 inch, something like that. So that gives me an idea of what kind of axle movement I'm going to have under the frame if set up at that length, and that should be a good movement for full travel. You know, obviously you want it to stay center all the time. That's not exactly feasible unless I was maybe do a triangulated 4-link. Maybe I should have gone that route, but for the type of suspension this truck's going to need for going down the road and stuff, this will be great. And that is how I used an old pair of earplugs, an ink pen, a Sharpie, and a piece of cardboard to kind of lay out to make sure what kind of travel I was looking at. Knowing that I'm looking at a 1/2 inch to 3/8 of travel, what I'm probably going to do is when I set this at the full level, I'm going to set the axle an 1/8 inch out the frame that way. That way, when it does travel that full range of motion, it goes an 1/8 inch out the frame that side, and 3/8 to 1/4 out the frame that side, and that gives me a large window of acceptable center for ride height, because I don't know that I'll be riding directly right at level with the panhard bar. And if it turns out that that is where I want to be, I can always, with the adjustable panhard bar, move it a good 1/8 inch to 1/4 one way or the other to put it where I like it. And if my ride height, I feel like it needs to be exactly center, I can. But that's why I have an adjustable panhard bar, because I've never done this before and this is a full learning experience. So this is how I laid it out, and now I'll go on to mounting my brackets and laying it out on the frame and cutting for length. Let's talk about custom parts here for a second. So you're going to buy a kit and it's going to come exactly everything you need. All you got to do is weld your tab on here or bolt this on here, and everything's going to go exactly how it should be. If you've got a out of the box type stuff, like a lot of parts for my Jeep Cherokee, you can buy all kinds of stuff for it, but sometimes they need to be modified a little bit, and it goes no different than anything you go to do. And so I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So this right here is my end for my panhard bar, and let me grab a tape measure here. I had one on my hip a second ago, and there we go. So it is looking at 1 5/8 inches wide there. So over here on the vise, I've got one of my bushings. It comes with 2 bushings, and it comes with a sleeve and a bolt with the brackets that I showed you. And the sleeves, everything fits in the bar like it should. The bushings here, but the problem is you still have got tape on this one. I've already cut this one down to length, and I've actually cut them a bit long, because if you look at it measurement wise, that is about 1 3/8 inches to that shoulder. So being 1 3/8 inches, 1 3/8 inches, 1 3/8 inches, you're talking 2 6/8, that's 3/4. So 2 3/4 inches. Well, my bar end's only 1 5/8 inches wide. So if I want to use both these bushings, I don't want the bar to move back and forth to the bushings. I want the shoulder to stop it. So in order to do this, I need to cut both of these bushings down some to where they press in on each side of that bar, and this shoulder right here is actually making contact with the outside of the bar end. So, and the next thing about that is I'm actually gonna have to cut this pin. This is your sleeve that I've actually got this clamped into the vise with. This sleeve goes inside your bushings, and this right here is also too long, and this will have to be cut down, and I have to get a shorter bolt for that setup. And I'll show you more about why that's that way here in a little bit. But just note that sometimes you have to cut and custom your pieces to get what you need. And they probably could have done some of this there at their shop, but they'd have had charge for their time, and the kit may not be as much. And if you're doing all this anyways, you don't mind custom fitting a few pieces, at least I don't. So buying a custom kit doesn't fully mean everything's going to go on like it should. You gotta take measurements and pay attention to what you're working with. So I've got my pin here, and I've got it marked at 2 1/8. Well, actually it's a little bit more than 2 1/8. I'm gonna cut a little bit longer, and then I can slowly trim it if I need to, which I probably will need to trim it like a 1/16, but we'll see. And plus, if for some reason I don't cut it exactly flush, it gives me a little bit extra of meat to kind of clean it up with a flapper wheel or something. And this is our bandsaw for, you can buy one of these Harbor Freight or something, but we lay down and it drops on its own, spring tension in order to cut. We use it like this a lot. Okay, now I've got a little burr there, and I'll take that off and kind of clean this up all the way around. But now I've got it cut to length. Manufacturer's probably going to tell you not to use it this way. We don't have a stand-up bandsaw, so this one works. So I've got it deburred some, and it's not exactly level. And I can kind of take a flapper wheel to it and eyeball it. But what I'm going to do is I've got it in the vise here, and I've got it pretty well level in the vise. And if I really want to be super picky about it, I can kind of do this. And let me see here. I'll just kind of tap it a little bit. Lay my rule up there. Yep, now we are level. So I'll give it a little extra there, just make sure. So I'm gonna take my I got a great big flat file here, and I'm gonna put it on there about as level as I can, kind of do that. And I'm gonna level it just a little bit at a time. I've only got one of these, and I can't mess up at this point. If I do, so I'm done for the day until I get another one. So I'm going to do that, and try and take I've got a bump, I'll go to that side and kind of work it some. But get that filed where it is nice and square. I'm pretty close. And then you can kind of see where the file is cutting on it. You can tell where it's shining, where it hasn't been hit yet. So I know about how far I need to go down. Kind of get all where it's flush. And then once I'm there, and I'm pretty close right now, I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna go around the edge here, just add a chamfer. And it don't take a little, I'm just trying to knock the burrs off of it, all I'm trying to do if there is any. Like that. So now that pin should be the right length to go through my 2 bushings, and then we can get a bolt and mock this up. Okay, so what I've done here is I did have to put that little metal sleeve back in the vise, level it back up, take a little bit more off of it to get this good and tight. And I can still see a slight bit of daylight in this one here, but I think that's good. I don't know, I might decide to shorten it just a little bit more, but we'll see. But I had, because of the bolt, we had a shorter bolt and shorter shank, and I want the shank to ride inside of these mounts here and throughout the sleeve. and we couldn't find one that was just right, so I used the one that was sent with it, and I've put 2 washers on this side and a washer on this side. And note that this is not the nylon lock nut that came with it, because I'm threading this on and off by hand right now, getting it mocked up. When I go to install it, I will install the correct nut and tighten it down. So, and what I want to do is a couple things we need to do here. This is just kind of initial mock-up. Is I'm gonna set it right like that. So one is this obviously has to be shorter to fit in the frame. And the next thing is let me come around on this side. I really would like for this to be as far back in the frame as I can without this bar interfering with anything in here. Because, you know, longer the rod, the better for travel. And I want to run this bottom side of these brackets on this flat like these are, and obviously it's leaving me a gap here, so I'm going to have to manipulate these brackets some. So my first measurement I want to do is that sticking off the frame about 4.5 inches, and I'd like for it to come back to here, put my center of my bolt at 2.5 inches right here. And I think that will give me plenty of play without interfering with this as far as down, and that gets me closer to the inside of the frame here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut about 2 inches off the back of this bracket from this bolt hole. But the next thing is I'm going to run this as my square edge right here. And so when I do that, I'll make a line up and I'll cut that straight up and knock the corner off, so that will land against the side of this wall here. So when I weld, I can weld it on bottom and sides just like I did these triangular braces here. And that'll be a good solid connection to the frame that way. So the next thing is, if I'm going to bring that back 2 inches, our bar is touching the frame here and we can't get down in there. So I want to go 2 inches beyond this mark and go ahead and cut this bar off. I'll still have to cut it again later, but that'll allow me to get it inside the frame to kind of see where we need to cut it at. Because I don't want to try and make the measurement without having the bar in place and kind of eyeballing it there and getting a good measurement. I can't do that with it this long. So I'll modify these brackets, I'll cut that bar off, we'll come back in here and we'll kind of get that other side of that mocked up and get it laid in place and see how long we need to cut it in the end. So, okay, I had to take a moment to clean the welding bench off because it's kind of become a catch-all during all this here recently. It still needs cleaned off a lot more, but at least I got some room where I can work now. So let me show you what I've got here. So this right here is our bracket that I had on each side of the bar, laid up against the frame there. And if you look, you see this kind of rubbed out line here. That's called a mistake. So kind of got the center of my hole figured out at that angle it was sitting at to make a right angle. And I had this up against the back of the frame roughly here. And I knew we wanted to move it back 2 inches. So I took and made a measurement from the back of the bracket. Let me get my tape measure here. Made that measurement from the back of the bracket to get me to my 2 inch mark. And then, because I know we want to make this our square bottom, I took square here and went off of that edge and drew me a line up through at that mark. And what I'll do is because that frame slightly curves, it curves a little bit on the inside, it's not exactly a straight corner. When I cut this, is I'll round this corner a little bit so it'll set in there as a pocket. And then I'll take this other one and I'll mark it the same. That way they'll match. So, and then I'll get the other one cut and we'll get the 2 inches cut off the bar, or sorry, get the rest of the bar cut off past that 2 inch mark, and we'll go from there. So as usual, when I'm doing this stuff, things change. And what I've done here is, let me grab this out of the saw. I cut a little bit more of my track bar off. I call it track bar, panhard bar, whatever you want to call it. Let me get my protractor. We'll set this in place here so you guys can see it. I made my 2 brackets, and if I'm going for level, and this, we're actually at mid travel right now, so there would be level. I'm still very much above that mounting point. I just tacked this on here the other day, just kind of give me an idea. And what I've decided to do is I had it out here where it was set pretty well level. I've cut this off, and I'm going to I'm going to tack my piece in here, and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm actually going to build it up off of this to meet my bar. And this will give me a lot of travel. The end is like 3 1/4 inches, so it'll come here. So it will clear my frame by about 1 3/4, 2 inches. And this would be the closest it would be to the frame and the swing. And I'm going to build this up off of this truss right here to where I can keep this bar as level as I can while this is at mid height. So plans changed. I actually thought I was going to be able to mount it there, but unless I want to mount this lower below the frame, I can't keep this level at mid travel. So anyways, that's where we're at right now. I just want to give you guys an update as I'm kind of fiddling around playing here. And a lot of that stuff takes a lot of time, so I didn't want to put all that on video, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm showing you guys as I kind of figure out what I'm going to do to prove to you that anybody can set one of these up if they do enough research and everything. And I'm sure there's some things I'm doing that are not right, but I think this is going to be functional in the end. It may not be as a pro standard, but I'm not paying to have a pro do it. I'm doing it myself. So we'll continue on here in a bit. All right, guys, let me show you where I'm at right now with this. So I took and cut the bar off, and I kind of chamfered around the edge with my angle grinder, the flapper wheel, where it's got a bevel to it. And I also took and drilled 2 holes. That's going to be you can call it a plug weld, people call it a rosette weld, because I'm going to weld in, I'm going to just bury hot metal into this until it's level, to make sure it's got a good bite along with welding all the way around this. And what I've also done is I put a fine thread bolt in there, longest threads I could find, to kind of keep it from messing my threads up while I'm welding. The next thing is I don't want this to be in there while I'm welding, because that surface right there, that heim joint, I don't want weld splatter to end up on that, because it'll cause it not to be smooth. So I'm going to get it laid over here out of the way and probably cover it with a leather glove along with my other pieces there to keep that from happening. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a couple tacks for now. I'm not going to burn everything in. I'm pretty sure this is where it's going to go, but until I'm 100% sure, I'm just going to tack it real heavy. I just want to show you how I had prepped it before ever putting that piece in. Okay. That right there should be plenty good enough for now. And I will do this later on when I go back and fully weld this. I will use this bolt again, just to, like I said, keep the thread solid inside it once they get hot and don't let anything warp. Alright guys, so here's where we stand right now. So I've tacked a couple pieces in here, and I'm actually going to cover these with an 1/8" flat bar once I weld everything, or flat steel once I weld everything in. And show you here how my plans of that is going to go. So that's in. And once I get the flat steel on, this will be wide enough at the bottom to actually get this. So it'll be something like that. And that will be my panhard bar mount. It's a little high off the axle, but it keeps my bar level, and it will be strong enough once I weld everything in that I don't have to worry about any issues. And of course, I'm gonna have 4.5 inches of up travel. So let me lay this across the, so 4.5 inches of up travel, and that right there will put the panhard bar level with the top of the frame when it's fully compressed. And keep in mind, we're actually gonna put a bar on top of this and put a deck on this truck. So that'll make the clear range of movement. This is the furthest out it will be, so as it goes up and down, it will actually draw in close. So my radius will go like this, about 1/2 inch total. And actually, probably not even that now that we are 25 inches almost. And when I done the drawing on the paper, I done it with a 24-inch link, and it was 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So we will definitely only be like 3 inches or 3/8 of movement for the entire axle. So I think that's pretty good. And so I'll set it, when I set it for ride height, I'll set it an 1/8 inch out that way. And that way when it travels, I'll go 1/4 inch that way throughout full travel, and an 1/8 inch that way beyond center. So when it's riding with the bar level, the axle will actually be an 1/8 inch off center of the frame that way. I think that'd be really good if all my math works out right that way. So I'm gonna keep on getting this set up here and box it in, and I'll show you what I end up with after that.